friends. Thanks for joining us on the Equipping You podcast. Our prayer is that this podcast will encourage and equip Alliance pastors and leaders to live spiritually healthy lives and lead healthy churches. For more information about the Christ-centered Acts 1-8 Alliance family, visit EquippingU.org.
Hey, welcome back to Equipping You podcast. This is season 11, episode 8.
Ocho.
There you go again, Alan.
I know.
Wow.
I'm on a roll.
I'm so impressed. You're like butter. You're on a roll.
My goodness.
Coming to you today from Columbus, Ohio, home of 155,000 non-U.S. born residents.
That's a lot of non-U.S. born residents.
It is. People from Nepal and Bhutan, Somalia, Democratic Republic of Congo, India, Mexico, and much, much more. So that'll become important today. I'm Terry.
And I'm Alan.
I'm the church ministries leader for the Alliance.
And I'm the director of development for the Eastern PA district of the Alliance.
And today we're going to be talking to Irma Chon, who is part of the pastoral staff at Cornerstone Christian Fellowship. She's also the pastor's wife in Hilliard, Ohio, northwest suburb of Columbus. And they have great ministry there to immigrants and refugees. So, Alan, so many opportunities in America today. There aren't too many communities. There are still a few, perhaps, but not too many communities where there hasn't been an influx of some kind of refugee people. And that gives us an opportunity for the gospel.
It sure does. And I think you said it well. There's just really not that many communities out there anymore where there's not some kind of population from somewhere else in the world.
Yep.
And I'm kind of hoping, if you're saying I'm like butter on a roll, then I'm hoping that our listeners' hearts are melted for this kind of ministry that Irma's going to talk to us about.
You are amazing. And she will melt your heart. She has some great stories. They're engaged in great ministry. I'm really looking forward to this interview.
Me too.
Grab yourself a Fanta banana yogurt soda.
What in the world? Yogurt soda?
Apparently, this is a big deal in Japan, which will also tie into our interview
I'm
today.
anxious to learn about that.
Sit back, relax. Here we go. And we're pleased to welcome to Equipping You podcast, Irma Chon. Irma, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well,
glad you're here.
Very glad to have you here. So we like to let our listeners get to know our guests. So if you would tell us a bit of your story, how you came to Christ, how you met your husband, Joseph, and which is an appropriate name for a husband in the Christmas season in which we are recording this, and how you wound up in ministry in the Christian Missionary Alliance.
Sure. I was born actually in Ohio, so not too far from here, over in Clark County in Springfield, Ohio. And it was there that I came to know Christ in high school. Did not grow up in a Christian family, but enjoyed going to church with friends that invited me. And it was there I accepted Christ as my Savior when I was in high school. And so then I got involved in outreach at that time in the area, evangelism teams, and just really felt a call of God on my life, but didn't know what that meant and what that looked like. So I saw an ad for a college named Simpson College, way out at that time in San Francisco. And here I had grown up in Springfield at that time, back in the 70s, and only thing I knew at that time was cornfields and white people. And I decided that I was pretty sure God's world was bigger than that, but I didn't know exactly how to go about it. And I saw this ad at that time for Simpson College. It was actually a summer institute for urban studies.
Wow. Okay.
So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get on a Greyhound bus, because that was the only way I could afford to get there.
Wow.
And
That's
I'll go out
ride.
to San Francisco And when I arrived there and went to Simpson College, it was there that God began to really call me into ministry. I went out on the Golden Gate Bridge, took a little walk with some friends for the first time, and saw right before my eyes someone jump off the bridge.
Oh, my.
And it was a tragic thing to witness, but it was life-changing for me. At that time, I just, in shock, after we called the phone on the bridge for people to come, the Coast Guard, looked out over the city and asked God, why couldn't we not had made a difference? We were literally just feet in front of this man when he threw himself over the bridge. And the Lord spoke to me so clearly, just that call on my life, saying, a year ago, Christians could have made a difference in his life. A month ago, Christians could have made a difference in his life. But his destiny he had made up. And I looked out over the city, and he said, my city are full of people just like him, waiting for Christians to step into their life and make a difference. And the Lord spoke to me that day, said, you've been thinking about this, meditating about this long enough. It's time to start playing ball. And I went back and enrolled full-time in Simpson College as an urban studies major at that time, not really sure even what all that meant and where that would take me. But then I met my husband then. He came from South Korea. His name is Joseph here, but his Korean name is Jun Hong. Yeah. So met him in freshman speech class, and we were married then out in San Francisco and began that ministry of serving the Lord together.
Wow. Praise God. That's a
story.
Powerful story.
That is a powerful story. And the Lord certainly uses circumstances in our lives to shape us, but he also uses people in our lives. So tell us about, 2, 3, 4 leaders who have had significant influence in shaping your life.
Yeah, even back to Simpson College at that time, that was the beginning. Professors that I had at Simpson College were really crucial in my life as a young Christian, not even sure what Christendom and serving a church and the world, what that looked like. And just professors that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, there's a dear professor still out at Simpson, Dr. Schaefer. He still, to this day, occasionally will just call me out of the blue. Wow. No way. And it's such an encouragement. So I really think people that the Lord put in my path, teachers through the university at that time, as well as other educators that just encouraged me to continue to seek God's favor and his face.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lifelong influence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
So, Irma, you're very involved through your church's ministry to immigrants and refugees. I wonder how you became interested in that kind of ministry. What first drew you to be aware of immigrants and refugees and really get connected with them?
Yeah, we moved to, obviously, I married an immigrant, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that was just because the Lord's leading in that relationship, not even thinking about ministry to immigrants or refugees at that time. I graduated from Simpson as a Christian education major and started to work with the Alliance in Louisville, Kentucky at that time in Christian education. And then about 22 years ago, I was asked by a pastor to come to Cornerstone, where I'm at currently in Hilliard, and that was to do children and youth ministry there. And that's really what I defined my calling. It was serving in the area of children and youth ministries. But after a time when I was in Hilliard, about 10 to 12 years ago, when refugees from Iraq began to come into our community, it became really obvious that there were so many refugees coming into our neighborhood that some of them literally were coming to the church and asking, for assistance. And that was how God just began to draw that compass that way, because I didn't seek that out. I was not even, interested in the refugee crisis. It wasn't something that was even on my radar, but it was on God's radar. It's on his heart. Yeah. And he began to put people literally, right outside the church door, refugees that were coming. And God totally moved my heart and others, to say this is the ministry that I'm giving you. I'm putting it right here before you.
Wonderful.
When you think about this ministry, is there maybe a central scripture that is motivating you to care for immigrants and refugees?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite verses. It's 1 Thessalonians 2:8, and it says that we loved you so dearly, so affectionately, that not only do we share the gospel with you, but our very lives.
I love that. That's such a good ministry
And that
verse.
just, that when I read that again, of course, we read it every year, but as we engaged in that ministry with refugees, that sharing, our ultimate goal is to share the gospel with them. But before we ever get to that step, we have to share our very lives. We have to love them like we love one another in the church. We have to love them and care for them. And you start to share your very life with them, You go to their birthday parties, they come to your birthday parties. You cry with them when they cry. You rejoice with them when they rejoice. So we begin to, that verse became very the steps that I want to live out in my life,
Great.
That's beautiful. That's such a good one.
So you and Joseph served together at Cornerstone Christian Fellowship in Hilliard, Ohio, so west side of Columbus.
Northwest side.
Northwest, yeah. Not all that far from those cornfields you mentioned.
45 minutes away. Can you believe it?
Yeah. So what is it that has attracted immigrants and refugees to that particular area, and what groups of people are represented in your community?
Yeah, it's always curious to me what attracts them to that area too. And I have asked them, you could go anywhere. Why did you come to Hilliard, Ohio? And many of them have told me that, I had a family member. There was a family member. So once there's somebody they know, they will come to where there's familiarity for them. But also our Afghan family that we love so dearly, they said, we knew absolutely no one in America. And they're like, where do you want to go? And they were asking, they're like, I don't know. We don't know. You tell us. And they said, we're going to send you to Columbus, Ohio. And they're like, okay. So some of them is just by chance. They just say they go where people send them. And of course, resettlement agencies are crucial in that. Right. They know where the resettlement agencies are. So most of the refugees that we have been really caring for, the majority have been from Iraq, until just recently, where things have changed in the world, and began to see Ukrainian refugees, and then refugees from Afghanistan, and now a large influence of refugees from Venezuela.
Okay.
So literally the world, in our community, Hilliard is only 13 square miles, but within that 13 square miles, there's 3 high schools. Each high school has over 2,000 students in the high school, and there's over 60 languages spoken within those 3 high schools.
That is, I've heard of high schools with bigger numbers of languages, but none in that small of a community to have 60 languages in that small. That's amazing. That is amazing. So you're trying to connect with these immigrants and refugees. What are some specific ministries that you do to connect with them?
There's quite a few, and we try to just be creative as the Lord gives us opportunity. But one of the biggest opportunities that we have, partnership is crucial in our community. So partnering with other churches, partnering with people who have resources. So one of the big partnerships we have is through a community garden. So there is another church in our community that has land, quite a bit of land. And so they give that land toward a community garden. Our church, we don't have land, but they give land for that. They don't necessarily engage their own parishioners in the work of the garden, but they say, here's the land and you can use it. So we farm that land, and each year, this last year, we grew 22,000 pounds of fresh organic produce that we gave away to our neighbors. And we invite them into the garden. We invite them to come and work alongside us in the garden. We allow them to take whatever produce they want. We also have a distribution center where we we distribute it. And that's where so many wonderful relationships are built. Just working together in the garden, they tell you their life stories. They share their stories with them. And many of them, as refugees, as we know, they're very tragic. They've all gone through tragic life stories. And so we share those stories with one another, opportunity to always pray with them. And then the distribution of the vegetables happen through a very unique barn that we have, that Orchard Foundation helped us with the funding of that. Wow. So through that distribution center, families come there, and we make it a really relaxing place. And when they come, they're like, can I ask you how much this costs? How much did this barn cost? Who paid for this? And we tell them the church, that the church loves you guys enough that we want you to have a place to come and get your vegetables. We have hot tea, and we talk. Anything that's a relational ministry gives us the opportunity to walk life out with our new neighbors. And there's other ministries. We just finished our largest outreach of the year last week. It's called the Good Tidings Christmas Store. And if your children receive a free or reduced lunch in the Hilliard area, you qualify to come and shop at the store. And it's not a handout, it's a hand up. We don't just pass out gifts without knowing. We lay them all out. It's like a shopping experience. They get to come in. They can choose 2 toys or gifts, items for every child in their family, 18 and under, but they pay 10% of the retail value of the gift. So if it's a $30 gift, they paid $3 for it. And there's some dignity in that, they're coming in, they're shopping, they're paying. And then we have a blessing room afterwards where everyone gets to come in. If you choose to come, we would love to just pray for your family and bless you. And often it opens the doors to share the gospel with people. So there's numerous we have English conversation classes, so many other creative ways that we can come alongside our neighbors.
Yeah, I love
Wonderful. That. Love it. So, Irma, I'd love to hear a story or two about the impact of Christ's love, the gospel of Christ on someone from the refugee and immigrant community through your ministry, through Cornerstone's ministry.
Sure. The first one that comes to my mind immediately is a dear friend, Azar. She moved here from Iraq. And it wasn't long after she was here, she was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. And on news of her illness, her husband left her. And when he left, he took everything. And she has 2 children. So she was left physically very ill, and 2 children, and with no help from financial help at all. Wow. So we had an opportunity to meet her and to pray with her, and to move the story up a little faster. She has a dream one night, and in her dream, Jesus came and touched her, and she said, "Who are you?" in the dream. And he said, "It's Jesus, and I'm healing you." Wow. And she told us this dream, so excited. And we said, okay, so a couple months later, she was scheduled for an MRI. And the doctor said, "I don't know how to tell you this." He said, "But there's no brain tumor there. There's no sign that there ever was a brain tumor." And she was able to say to the doctor, he said, "I have no explanation." She said, "Well, I do." She said, "Jesus told me that he healed me." And the doctor said, "Well, he certainly did." So we had a chance. She became a believer in Christ. We baptized her on this past Easter with her 2 children. And another area that God is really working is in the Japanese community. Okay. We go to the country of Japan, and I've been there and seen our alliance work there, but yet such an unreached country. But the Japanese are coming here for Not all of them are immigrants. They're here on work visas, which is exciting because they're going back to Japan with the gospel. Right. Yep. And we baptized on Easter a doctor and his wife. Both of them were doctors. We baptized them on Easter. My husband has been discipling them, and they are so excited to go back to Japan now and to be disciplers. And there are 2 or 3 other Japanese couples currently right now coming for discipleship. So the gospel is really spreading among this Japanese community as well.
Wow. That's beautiful
Praise
stuff.
God.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
So, a church, and we would certainly hope this, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, our church has plenty of opportunity for that around us, but we haven't engaged yet. So what would you say, 2 pieces of advice? 1, you better do this, and 1, you better not do this.
Yeah.
Give them 1 thing to avoid and 1 thing to pursue.
Let's start with what to pursue. Pray and ask the Lord, who is my neighbor? Like, where are they? Because they're there, you're right. And the Lord will show you. Pray. And then don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid to engage in relationship with them. I'm going to write a book someday based on if you give a mouse a cookie, because that's where you start. If you become a friend of a refugee, then you'll have to go in and have tea with them. And then when you go in to have tea with them, you're going to get to know them. Then you're going to be invited to the birth. It just continues. So just start with go and bring some cookies or actually find out, do some homework, know what kind of cookies they eat, or dates. That's a wonderful thing. During Ramadan, if they're Muslim, bring over a package of dates because they break fast every night with dates. Find out something that you can knock on their door because they're going to welcome you in.
Yeah.
And once they welcome you in, you're going to be friends for life. They are very relational. We tend to be, as Americans, very purpose-driven in the fact of our schedule. It's like da-da-da-da. But they are so relational. So take that. That would be the do's to do. I'll share with you a mistake that I made. Don't do this. So Huda, my dear friend from Iraq, she was one that I would pick her up and would take her to the garden. And she loved to come to the garden and work. And then after a hard day at the garden, I'd drive her back home. I just want to go home. I'm tired. I have things I need to do. So I just drop her off in front of her house. She said, come in and have tea. And I'm like, oh, Huda, I need to go home. And she'd be like, why? You have to go in. So I was like, okay. So I came in, and of course we had tea. And she said, I just really love it when you come here. And I told her, I said, yeah, this is what you don't do. I said, yeah, you're right. I said, when I come here, I can speak English with you, and you can speak English, and we can learn English. And she looked at me. This was life-changing for me. And she looked at me and said, this is not about learning English from you. You are my friend. And I realized then that our relationship meant more to her than it did to me. So slow down.
Wow.
It just, the Lord used that in my life because I needed that. And I realized how important the relationships, they're not starving necessarily for food out of the garden, but they're starving for relationships.
Goodness, yeah.
And we have the key to connect them to ultimate relationship with Christ. So don't do as I did, try to avoid those precious moments of just going into their house and being relational and invest in that friendship the way they do.
Yeah.
That's beautiful stuff. Wow.
So, Irma, wondering, do you have to be a big church to do this kind of ministry, or can a smaller church or medium-sized church do this kind of ministry? And are there resources you can tap into?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on the medium to smaller size of a church. I don't know if there's a gauge that tells you you're small or medium, but definitely, if you would see on Sunday morning, I'd say we're medium to a small church. And my goodness, you don't have to be a mega church to say we need all these resources in order to do this. Last Sunday in our church, there were 7 different languages spoken within that small church. Wow. And that being English as their second language. So it's amazing what God will do. You just offer up, people, it's your heart to begin to pray and say, we have something to offer to this community. And it starts small. When we started our English conversation class, that verse, don't despise small beginnings. Don't despise that.
Yeah, that's good.
Small beginnings are okay. That's where it starts. It will grow. Just be faithful and committed and willing to do what God's asking you to do. And there's resources out there. I'm part of RAIN, our Refugee and Immigrant Network with the Alliance. On the National Committee. You can go to rainalliance.org. We're there to serve you, to connect you to resources, to people in your community. We exist to equip, educate, and help you to know who your neighbors are. What are the things that we can do to reach them? So we will be diligent to connect you if that's something, a resource, and partner in your community. Don't be afraid to partner outside your own denomination. Partner with other churches in the community that are working together.
It's good.
That's good stuff. I appreciate that.
Yep.
I think we're all pretty familiar. There's a whole lot of political wrangling going on around immigration, refugees, and some people have some pretty strong feelings about that. But we know in the Alliance that following Jesus means we have a mandate to care for our people that are coming from other countries to our neighborhoods. Could you help our Alliance listeners to embrace that a little bit more and seeing that as a mandate and not just kind of something optional?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I think we have to be open to the idea that God is literally sending the nations to us. And it doesn't let us off from going. We still need to go to the hard places, the unreached areas of the world. But he's also taking all those people from those hard places and those unreached worlds, and now he's putting them right in our backyard. All we got to do now is cross the street. So we need to be aware that this is part of God's eternal plan in the end times to bring the nations to us, because he so desires that all, come to know him, every tribe, every tongue. So once our hearts are open to that, I think a mandate for us to know is the Matthew 25. And I think we're all familiar with that when Jesus says, I was hungry and you fed me. When did we do that, Lord? Well, when you were passing out the vegetables, or remember that time that semi-truck had all those potatoes and you didn't know what and you gave them out to people? You were feeding me. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. They're thirsty for relationships. And every time we smile and speak kindly to a refugee, an immigrant, they are thirsty. And we're giving them something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. This is so huge to them. They're like, yesterday I just met a family from Turkey. They have only been here 7 days. And they called me on the phone, and I said, I went over to their apartment to see what they need, because they absolutely have nothing. They're just living inside an apartment. And I said, how did you get my number? And this is all to what God is doing. And they're like, well, another refugee gave me your number because they said you help refugees. Well, it's God is doing that through us, So I was a stranger and you welcomed me. That is so important that they feel welcomed.
Yeah.
And we can go on. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you came to visit me. And so that Matthew 25 verse, I think, when you did this to the least of these, Jesus saying, you're doing that to me, that we literally see that we're serving Christ when we do this to those among us, the least of these.
Amen. Irma, love your heart and love what you're doing. May God continue to bless and use you. And thanks for taking the time today just to come and tell us about what God's doing through your ministry.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really good to have you.
Thank you.
Well, Alan, really enjoyed that interview with Irma.
Oh, yeah, that was a really good interview.
We asked after the interview the size of her church. On Sunday morning, they have about 60 people.
60 people. She's talking. I'm like, all right, she said medium to small, and everything that they're doing, I'm thinking there's probably, 180, 200 people there. When she said 60, I'm like, how do they get that much done?
Yeah, small but mighty.
Yes, small but
mighty. So if you're leading a small church out there or part of a small church, hey, you can do this. You can get engaged in the immigrant and refugee community as an opportunity to reach people for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we get hung up on governmental regulations and all of those kinds of things pertaining to immigration. And we simply need to see immigration as a gospel opportunity, that God is sovereignly at work, moving the peoples of this world into places where they have an opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's why he's bringing people here, and that's the opportunity that we have as Alliance churches across the U.S. And if anybody should be able to do this, Alan, it's the Christian Missionary Alliance, because that's how we got our start, was reaching immigrants.
100%. And we were at the beginning of in the 70s, we were a huge part of immigrants coming to the United States.
That's right.
And have a legacy now that is over 50 years old, just in receiving those that are coming to us in that sense, too.
Indeed.
In that, I don't know what wave you would call that, but that big wave.
Exactly. So, think about it and pray about it, what your church can do in relation to immigrants and refugees. Next time, we're actually going to be coming to you from Maricopa, Arizona. Alan will be zooming in.
I will be not actually zooming into Maricopa, but zooming into Zoom.
Yes.
While you're in Maricopa.
Zoom. I will be live and in person in Maricopa with Michael Gilmore, who works on the South Pacific District team. And we're going to talk about Next Gen Ministry. So that's going to be an exciting episode. Until then, keep the faith.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Equipping You podcast. If you liked this episode, please consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. For more information about this podcast and other ministries of the Alliance, visit EquippingU.org.